Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Juma Mubarak. Ramadan Kareem again. Hopefully everyone's Ramadan is going well. I know we're in the home stretch with the last 10 days of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make these the best 10 days of the month, and may all of your du'as and fasting be accepted. We have a wonderful event today. Our Khatera is going to be excellent, mashallah. The talk will be delivered by Relwan Onikoyi. And let me read to you his bio. He's going to be speaking today about the extent of Shaitan's hold. His bio is that he has graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2011 with a BA in philosophy and minors in Arabic and Hispanic studies. He's currently completing a doctoral degree in religion at Temple University in Philadelphia, where he also teaches undergraduate courses in religion. His research interests include Islamic intellectual history, and more broadly, studies in comparative religion. His current work focuses on intersections between Sufi thought and Kalam, particularly on the nature of waliya. Mashallah, thank you so much for joining us, Relwan. After Relwan gives his Khatera, we are going to be joined by Hanan Seid, who's going to perform some spoken word for us. A little different from what we usually do, but it should be amazing, so please stick around for that. And of course, as usual, Sister Gail is going to present the announcements for the week. So, alhamdulillah, again, thank you for joining us. I am going to unmute Relwan. I think you're all set. And inshallah, I'll turn it over to you, Relwan.
All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I congratulate all of us for reaching these last 10 days, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. And I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes these the best 10 days, that we reach our goals, the goals we set out for Ramadan, that we reach them in these last 10 days, and that we carry them throughout the year after the month of Ramadan. Allahumma ameen. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Just want to confirm that everyone can see my screen, right? Okay, good. Yep, so I see Sister Tahija nodding her head. So since this is a Khatera, we're going to try to make this somewhat of a conversation, so we're all missing the khutbahs, we're all missing the mosque, right? It's sad to not be able to go to the mosque and to meet the community, right, face to face and at large, right? But one of the benefits of doing this is we get to be a little bit more intimate, right? As we know, the khutbah is a bit more, is more formal, and there's reason for that, there's purpose in that. But here we're going to be a little bit more informal, and hopefully I will learn from you as well, inshallah ta'ala. So what we're discussing today, it's what we all know, but I think it's worth reminding ourselves what we know and don't about Shaitan himself, the individual, right? But also satanic forces, you might say, because the shayateen, as Allah refers to them, are go beyond Shaitan, the individual, right? Shaitan, that iblis, that personality called iblis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of shayateen al-ins wal-jinn, right? The satanic folks among the human beings and the jinn. We'll primarily focus on iblis, but perhaps we can get into forces at large as well. And so just to remind us what we know of their nature, what we're trying to do here is to kind of remove some of the, the myth and the maybe excessive fear that we tend to have of Shaitan, kind of in the Muslim world and popular culture. We want to talk about what type of concern is justified, because there is justified concern that we're meant to have, and when does it become excessive, right? When is it misplaced? Yeah. And so some of the things that I think lead to this misplaced, unjustified fear is the very fact that their nature is wholly different from that of ours, from that of our own, right? We are told that, they are made of a fire of scorching winds, min nari samum. We are told that, or a smokeless flame of fire. In other words, again, from the essence, the core of your being, materially, so to speak, is different from that of ours, right? Where we are told we are made from clay and so on. But we are told they have free will, like we do. We are told they are obligated to worship, as we are. We are told they will be brought to account for their deeds, as we will be. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, right? That I did not create the jinn and the mankind except to worship me, right? Just a second. Yeah, good. Or, and the jinn themselves report in the Quran, right? As we're told that they converse with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they say, "Wa inna minna salihuna wa minna duna dhalik," right? Kunna tara'iqa qidada, right? That some among us are righteous, while some of us are other than that or below that, right? And that we have followed divergent paths. Sounds familiar, right? This is quite like human beings, yeah? That they will be brought to account for يَوْمَ إِذٍ لَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ ذَنْبِهِ إِنسٌ وَلَا جِنٌّ. We are told, يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ أَلَمْ يَأْتِكُمْ رُسُلٌ مِّنْكُمْ يَقُصُّونَ عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِي وَيُنذِرُونَكُمْ لِقَاءَ يَوْمِكُمْ هَذَا قَالُوا شَهِدْنَا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِنَا. Right? So we are told, O company of jinn and mankind, did there not come to you messengers from among you, relating to you my verses and warning you of the meeting of this day of yours? And they say, yes, indeed, we bear witness against ourselves that this is true. So again, like human beings, they will be brought to account for the extent to which they follow the commandments of God, right? And like human beings, some will and some won't, right? Like human beings, they can deceive one another, right? They can deceive one another, not just human beings, right? Again, the shayateen, the jinn rather, reports to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وأنه كان يقول سفيهنا على الله شططا وأن ظننا أن لن تقول الإنس والجن على الله كذبا. So we know now, the jinn say, that the foolish among us would say outrageous things about God, which at once, at one time we might have been misled rather to believe, right? But we know not that the foolish among us would say outrageous things about God. They would try to mislead us by saying strange things about God. And we assumed that no one would ever, lie about God, right? So we believed the lies they told us, right? And again, the jinn misleading one another, deceiving one another, right? You can see, in a sense, their form materially is different from ours essentially, right? And Allah SWT expresses this by speaking of their being created from fire and us being created from clay. Of course, we do not know the true nature, the true reality of this. What does that mean that I emerged from clay? What does it mean that the jinn emerged from fire, right? But that is a matter of the ghaib. That is a matter of the unseen, right? But as many scholars highlight, the point here is to speak, or among many other subtleties, many other subtle benefits of this, is to show that they're essentially different materially. And yet, in their traits, right, in the way they behave, almost you can say in their psychology, right, in the psychological paths open to them, they're quite similar, right? There are paths open to me that I can choose the path of goodness. I can choose the path of error, right? I can choose to aid my fellow beings towards goodness, or I can choose to aid my fellow beings towards harm, spiritual harm and otherwise, right? And this is what we're hearing of the jinn as well, okay? Again, we know that they are subtle bodies, and I think this is largely what leads to this kind of fear that we tend to have, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding the jinn, Ya bani Adam, لا يفتننكم الشيطان كما أخرج أبوكم من الجنة ينزع عنها لباسهما ليريهما سوآتهما إنه يراكم هو وقبيله. So we are told, O children of Adam, let not Satan tempt you as he caused your parents to go forth from the garden, stripping them of their garments to show them their nakedness. Now, there's a lot we could discuss here about what has occurred here, but we'll leave that for now. Maybe in the kind of conversation we might get into that about some of the spiritual implications of this. Right? What is going on with because from what we see, it's not that Shaitan stripped them of their garments as such, but because of what transpired, they became aware of their nakedness, right? And we know that they started running around the garden trying to cover themselves up. So what's going on there? What does that have to do with the development of the human, spiritual awareness, spiritual consciousness. I think that's worth considering, perhaps on your own or in other, maybe in another gathering, right? But we are told, the point I wanted to make here is, surely he sees you, he and his tribe, or he and his people, whence you see them not. So this is part of what freaks us out, I think. They can see us, we can't see them, yeah? And another thing that might freak us out is that we know that they might possess incredible physical strength and speed. At least some of them, perhaps. We find this in the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, right, where we are told some jinns built for him immense palaces and statues, I should say, basins as large as great watering troughs, we are told, and so on. We are told that another jinn said he could bring the throne of the Queen of Sheba in the twinkling of an eye, right? Or rather, no, he says that he could bring the throne before Suleiman finds his seat again after getting up, right? Al kama qala Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, right? Now, what about Shaitan in particular? What's his story? And again, we know this, but I think it's useful for us to think about what occurs between Shaitan and Adam alayhi salam, and why it's useful for us. What does that tell us about the function of Shaitan in human life, in the human journey, right, at large, right? Because the journey of Adam is that of the human being, right? And so, of course, we know Iblis was jealous of Adam, and so by extension of the human being, right, is the point I'm making, right? So he was jealous of Adam, and he becomes instrumental in the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the garden. And he asks God to grant him time until the day of judgment to try and misguide human beings, right? So he is jealous of Adam because of the stature, because of the rank, the position that God has given Adam alayhi salam, right? God has made this human being, Adam and Eve, he has made them khalifa, right? He has made them inheritors of the land, right, of earth, right? He has made it that they have a type of intellect which surpasses that of the other creatures. He has made, so to highlight the rank of the human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks asks the jinn and the angels to prostrate the human being. And as we know, Iblis, that shaitan that is, he refuses to do this. And so he vows to lead humankind astray, right? قال بعزتك لأغوينهم أجمعين إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين. By your might, I will surely mislead them all, except among them your sincere servants. Now remember, this is something that God allows him to do, right? That God allows him to do. As though that this entire, the way this entire incident transpired was God's purpose, right, from the get-go, right? قال ربي بما أغويتني لأزينن لهم في الأرض ولأغوينهم أجمعين إلا عبادك من المخلصين إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين. He says, my Lord, because you have thwarted me, I will surely make all evil on earth seem goodly to them, and shall most certainly attract them to all grievous error, again, except those who are your sincere servants. So we're getting a hint of the extent of his power, the reach of his influence, right? We're seeing this here, except those who are your sincere servants. Okay, so how does Allah respond to this oath of his? He testifies, he swears, I am definitely, certainly, لَأُغْوِيَنَّ, right? There's some emphasis in what he's saying here. I will surely misguide these servants. I'm going to show that these human beings aren't as great as, in Shaitan's mind, they're not as great as you have presented them to be, right? Allah says, right, فَالْحَقُّ وَالْحَقَّ أَقُولُ لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنْكَ وَمِمَّنْ تَبِعَكَ مِنْهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. Right, this then is the truth. As though this is like, almost like if you will, it's a climax among various climaxes, right? It's reached the point where, yes, this certainly was a goal of this whole affair, right? that Shaitan would, of course, disobey, giving his pride, his haughtiness. And then he says, I'm going to try to misguide your servants. And God says, well, that is the truth, indeed, right? And I will fill up Jahannam, right, with you and those who follow you all together. And Allah then says elsewhere, Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan. So this has been, the Arabic here has been kind of messed up a little bit. So I'll read the English then. So it says, هذا صراط علي مستقيم. This is to me a straight way. What is a straight way? So Shaitan has said, I'm going to try to misguide them. And then God says, all right, well, that's as some scholars understand it, well, this is exactly what the goal is. The goal was, you're going to try to misguide them. Let's see who will use this intellect, right, and this spirit, this ruh from God, who will use that, right, to refuse the wiles of Shaitan, right? Because this is what is particular to the human being, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him an intellect, right, a free will, and a fitrah, a sound fitrah that kind of calls to God, a sound fitrah that is drawn to God, who will use all of these things to pass the test of these great responsibilities. As we know, free will and intellect are huge responsibilities. And what do we do with it, right? So that's the test. That just is the human test, right? The human being is sent with that. Are you going to choose to obey God, or are you going to choose the other path? And Shaitan is part of influencing towards that other path, right? So this to me is a straight way. Indeed, my servants, right? With respect to my servants, you have no authority over them, right? Except those who follow you of the deviators, right? And indeed, hell is a promised place for them all. Okay? So that said, right, then what is the role of Shaitan in human life? And we've kind of seen hints of this from what we've looked at already. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسُدَّنَّكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Right? لَا يَسُدَّنَّكُمْ. Right? So rather there's a something is missing here. The Arabic says, let not Satan avert you. Right? إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Indeed, he is a clear enemy to you. Right? Indeed, he is a clear enemy to you. And we are told, do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan, right? وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, right? Indeed, he is a manifest enemy to you. Indeed, he is a manifest enemy to you. We are told that God has made Satan's aspersions a trial for those within whose heart is a disease and those whose hearts are hardened. Again, this is part of God's grand plan, part of God's grand purpose is that there will be this entity, or rather entities beyond Shaitan, right? There will be these forces which will stand as obstacles in the human's journey to God. How will the human being deal with that? It's important to remember that this is the primary function of Shaitan. We hear a lot of talk about other things that Shaitan might do, but his goal, his primary interest is turning one away from God, turning the individual away from remembrance of God, right? He only calls his followers so that they might be among those destined for the blazing fire, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this is so even for prophets. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ. Right? We have made for every prophet enemies, or an enemy, Satans from among mankind and jinn. So that if anyone fulfills this same function of misleading, of turning an individual away from God, they are in effect a shaitan, right? They are in effect a shaitan. Sorry, I think just making sure that, okay. So they're, if anyone fulfills the same function, they're in effect shaitan, right? Whether it's the being made from fire, whether it's Iblis in particular, whether it's a human being. If one stands as an obstacle in an individual's journey to God, right? Anyone who stands as an obstacle in the journey toward God is a shaitan. And that is the primary function of shaitan, right? Those who inspire each other with flowery discourse that only aims to deceive, okay? So some of those strategies with which shaitan does all of this, right? So we're told, for example, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. So Satan threatens you with the prospect of poverty and orders you to immorality. So consider, for example, somebody is faced with the challenge of, oh, should I give my money for charity or not? Right? And then you get some thoughts in your mind that, oh, you know, if I give out of my wealth, I'm just gonna be poor, right? For example, in such ways, shaitan might tempt the individual, you know, not to advance in his journey toward God, right? By refraining from giving, right? We are told, إنما يأمركم بالسوء والفحشاء وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. He orders you to evil and immorality and to say about God what you do not know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word orders, right? Ya'murukum. He orders you to immorality, he orders you to evil. All right, but we'll see what exactly does that mean. How is it that shaitan orders, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, I'll read the Arabic to save time, or the English, or you have believed, indeed intoxicants and games of chance, you know, gambling and so on, and idolatrous practices and the divining of the future, right? So, you know, trying to pretend to know what is to come in the future, are but a loathsome evil of Satan's doing. Now, an intoxicant itself can't be Satan's doing, right? An intoxicant itself is just simply made, you know, you might make it from pressed grapes, right? But it's rather what these things cause, right? What are their effects in human society, and how does shaitan use these things again to create obstacles between the human beings and their Lord, right? And that shaitan might cause forgetfulness, again, to create obstacles between human beings and their God, right? So other examples in which shaitan might try to mislead human beings, to prevent, to create this rift between humans and God, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by causing between you animosity and hatred, right, through certain actions, right? So we know certain things lead to evil, lead to animosity, lead to hatred, right? Because of the consequences of these things, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, entice whoever you can with your voice, right? Assault them with your horses and foot soldiers, and be their partner in all sins relating to worldly goods and children, and make all sorts of false promises to them, right? Which is all delusion, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he tells shaitan, go ahead, try to entice them with your voice. Assault them with your horses and foot soldiers. Now, of course, generally this is taken as figurative. In other words, assault them with all your might, right? Try to influence them with all your might. Be a partner with them in their worldly goods and children, in their sins related to worldly goods and so on, and make false promises to them, because that is the test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, right? That we're going to have these whisperings. How are we going to deal with it, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Satan has gained mastery over them, that is human beings, and has caused them to remain oblivious of the remembrance of God. Such as these are Satan's group or partisans, right? Verily it is they, the partisans of Shaitan, right? Hizbul Shaitan, who will truly be the losers, right? So Shaitan, what does it mean to gain mastery over them? By causing them to remain oblivious of the remembrance of God. That is where the mastery of Shaitan lies, right? Knowing the human psychology to get the human being to be oblivious of God, to forget, to be heedless of God, right? That's what Shaitan is interested in, okay? And then I want to emphasize, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan وَكَفَى بِرَبِّكَ وَكِيلًا. Right? لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ لَيْسَ لَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانٌ. Right? Indeed, you shall have no authority over my servants. Right? That is, of course, those who believe and are firm in their belief and are consistent in their belief. And none is worthy of trust but your Lord. I want to give us some examples of affliction in the Quran and see how people of the past considered Shaitan, how Satan tries to influence them. We are told here, وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي. Okay, we're told here, وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذَا أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ, and this is Yusuf alayhi salam. وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِنَ الْبَدْوِ مِن بَعْدِ أَن نَزَغَ الشَّيْطَانُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ إِخْوَتِي. So we are told he was certainly good to me. That is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he took me out of prison and brought you his family from Bedouin life, after Satan had induced discord between me and my brothers. Now what happened here? We know the story. The brothers were jealous of Yusuf, right? And they decided to throw Yusuf in the well and so on and so forth. Did Satan force them to do that? That's not the point, right? They still have responsibility for that. Now, of course, we know that Yusuf sought forgiveness for them and so on, right? But otherwise, they will have been held to account for that because they did that act, right? So when Yusuf says here that Shaitan induced discourse between me and my brothers, right, is that he influenced them, he whispered them, he used his wiles, but they succumbed to that. It's important to recognize that. Otherwise, all accountability would be lost, right? So the human being is still accountable for succumbing to the wiles of Shaitan. It's not that Shaitan just gets this hold over us where I'm just like a, like a sheep and, I've been forced, to do whatever Shaitan orders me to, right? It's inducement, which I now either choose to reject or choose to follow. Notice when Ayub says, "Inni massaniya shaytanu binusbin wa adhab," right? Ayub says that Shaitan has touched me with hardship and torment. Now, what could Ayub alayhi salam mean? Does Ayub think that Shaitan himself, right, literally made, caused the loss of his family and his poverty and so on, right? Not likely. Rather, what is Shaitan trying to do to him in terms of how Ayub is responding to his state of affairs? Is Shaitan trying to get him to despair, to lose hope, right? And so on and so forth, right? So all of that said, in the few minutes remaining, right, I want to see how do we respond to these wiles, right? And how do we, again, not give Shaitan a position that is not actually his, right? We want to place him in his proper place, right? So that we can navigate this journey, this trial of being human, right? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, speaking to the Prophet, take to pardoning, right? So people come to you, the kuffar, the ignorant ones come to you, say all sorts of outrageous things. Take to pardoning and enjoin rights and turn away from the ignorant. And should a temptation from Satan provoke you, then seek refuge in God. Notice how simple the Quran makes it. Seek refuge in God. Truly, He is hearing, knowing. Indeed, those who are conscious of God, when Satan touches them, they remember God, then behold, they see. Right? فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. They remember God and they see the state of things. They recognize, oh, this is just a temptation from Shaitan, and they move on, right? Right? So how much power does he have? He does not have sultan over us, right? إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَهُ سُلْطَانٌ عَلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. He has no power over those who have attained to faith and practice and place their trust in their sustainer. He only has power over those who follow him. In other words, the agency is with us, right? And if I follow him, right? If I choose to follow him, right, then I have given my agency to him to an extent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when everything will have been decided, and I think this is a crucial ayah here, when everything will be said and done, that is and at the end of everything, right? Satan will say, behold, God promised you something that was bound to come true. And I too held out all manner of false promises to you, but I deceived you. Yet I had no power at all over you, Satan will say. I had no power at all over you. All I could do was call you. Da'autukum fastajabtum li. I called you to do certain things and you responded, right? So do not blame me, right? But blame yourselves, right? It is not for me. So he says, do not blame me, but blame yourself, right? So this is important. Satan will say, look, God made you real true promises. I made you false ones, but I had no power over you. All I could do was call you to do certain things and you chose to respond. So the gist of all this, and this will end here, is that the jinn, like human beings, can be believers or unbelievers, as we see. There are some particularities to their form, but importantly, Shaitan has no power to force us to do anything. So we need to kind of try to, I think, start minimizing the effect of shaitan in our minds, because I feel like in many cases, in many cultures, if you will, there's this notion of, like these forces are out to get me and are always getting me and are always forcing me to do things, right? He whispers and tries to persuade. He beautifies the evil in our minds. But whether we follow the footsteps of shaitan is up to us, right? And we don't want to pretend that it is shaitan that has forced us to do things. We need to take accountability for our own selves for succumbing to the wiles of shaitan. We always want to be on guard and try to be in constant remembrance of God, which requires constant self-reflection. And of course, seeking refuge in God from the wiles of shaitan. Seeking refuge in God from the wiles of shaitan. So, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. I'm not sure if we have any time for conversation or anything. So I'll leave that up to Sister Nicole.
Jazakallah khair, Relwan. Inshallah, we will come back to questions if there are any at the end. But thank you so much. That was excellent. It was a great reminder for us to remember that, the waswas of shaitan is loud when it's not Ramadan. It is loud, but it is up to us to listen to it or not listen to it. So Jazakallah khair, that was a great reminder. Alhamdulillah, I know for myself, it is quieter in my head during Ramadan. So alhamdulillah, it's a nice breather where I know the voices I hear and the things I do and don't do are truly 100% on me. It's a good reminder during Ramadan to take a close look at ourselves and say, no excuses. This is our own nafs. So alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair for that beautiful reminder, mashallah. Hanan is now going to perform her spoken word for us. Let me read to you a little bit about Hanan before she begins. Hanan Seid is a recent graduate from Marymount University with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication. Hanan currently lives in Arlington, Virginia, but will be joining the mainline community in June of this year. She likes to say her home is in Virginia, but her heart is in Hogwarts. Big Harry Potter fan, mashallah. Hanan is an activist in training through her work with Engage, an artist, future journalist, and a spoken word artist. She has published 2 books of poetry, Poetess and Catalyst. She is the founder of the Michaelis Night series at Studio Pause in Virginia, which gives their community a space to share their stories. Hanan is an immigrant, Black, Muslim woman, and uses her poetry and art to express her story and perspective. Hanan, jazakallah khair for joining us. There she is. Let me unmute her. There you go. You should be unmuted now.
Okay. Hi,
Assalamualaikum. I'm going to turn it over to my girl.
Okay. I'm excited, alhamdulillah. So I have like 3 poems for you guys. I have been doing spoken word since I was in high school. Sophomore year of high school, I was a very shy kid who was very uncomfortable with the idea of speaking, period, and fell in love with spoken word because all you have to do is talk about something for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then everyone thinks you're like really good at speaking, but you're actually really not. You're just really shy. So I have these 2 poems for you, 3 poems. The first poem that I like to do is Why I Do Slam, why a shy girl would do slam in the beginning. And so that's what it's titled. I fight for her, him, them, they, I'm a pacifist. My words are my weapon of choice. My body is a machine. My tongue and my mind are my ammo, and you are my battlefield. Shooting everyone who's ever broken me with a vengeance. Like a schizophrenic nail gun, I'll try to drill my silence into your ignorance and give you all the words I should have said but didn't. I finally get to tell my story. I'm sorry it takes me creating a war zone to finally speak, but this is a way to finally speak, so I hope you don't become the inspiration to my next slaughtering. The spotlight is where I'll put you on a pedestal just to watch you fall. The spotlight is where your arrogance looks best. Your complexion here is beautiful, and I create noise because people don't realize how knowledgeable silence is. So that's the first piece. The second piece that I will be performing is entitled, thank you, Languages. And languages is, so I feel like as an immigrant, when you come here, you kind of like lose your language. That's like the first thing that you lose. And I had to learn English, and so I lost all the languages that I learned beforehand. And so that's why I wrote this poem, Languages. In class, raising my hand felt like a marathon that I was too weak to be a part of. So I always fell short. Using my voice felt like an avalanche triggered by the earthquake in my knees. This avalanche, a recurring nightmare, these knees, a recurring earthquake. I learned English here. My accent holding on to me like a leech, taking out every ounce of courage to speak, but slowly it went away. Dear tongue, please let these words fall out well enough for them not to ask me where I'm from. I sacrificed 3 languages for this one. This is what educated sounds like. We flew here on the hopes and dreams that a Mayflower possesses, to a strange place where everything is color-coded. Shoes, the news, the county, the system. This place had the stench of occupation covered up with the perfume of freedom, a staged scene. Everything here is a stage, so conversation felt like a performance. Perform well and you'll be labeled American. One day a woman will put her arms around you and say, whoa, you speak so well. This is no compliment, but this is the moment you have been waiting for. I remember once my father said he hated talking at work, that they keep asking him to repeat himself. My parents know 4 languages each fluently. From the battles they have fought, their accents still thick. They sacrificed everything, but carry the load of 4 languages, a GPS of where they have been, so when people ask me where I'm from, I often hesitate, because I look like you. I look like you, but I lost my memory, all my history before this one, so bear with me. I have an accent now, but only when I speak my own language. So that's my second piece. Thank you. So my third piece is, it's basically a letter, right? So I started this letter when I was 20 years old, of tips for my 10-year-old self, for my 20-year-old self, of the things that 10-year-old self would endure. So every year I added something new, and I turned 24, so I added 4 more. So it's 14 things from my 24-year-old self to my 14-year-old self. So it's like a list of tips. I love this poem because of the fact that it's like every year I actually get to edit it. I have to edit it. And so I think it's a really great way to carry memories. So this will be my last piece. Okay. Dear Hanan, 1, you're still a loner. 2, your personality isn't always easy for people to swallow. They'll find you distasteful, choke on your harsh words, and act as though it's your fault that they didn't read the warning label. 3, wait 7 years and your strength will be the thing that your mother will rely on the most. Your family will borrow your backbone, step on your heart, but you will be left weak but not broken. You know your strength but have never seen its boundaries. 4, you have yet to receive your Hogwarts letter. 5, they will tell you you're wise beyond your years just to remind you how small you are. 6, your scarf will never be easy. So don't punch. Speak slow. It'll be easier for them to understand. Make every word clear. Insult them graciously. Smile while saying an eloquent F your ignorance, flip your hijab back and keep walking. 7, you still love Harry Potter. Dream of Hogwarts, love Lord Voldemort, know you are a wizard because existing as a Muslim Black immigrant woman in America is magical. 8, wait 6 years and you'll find you'll get a phone call. You will beg her to live, even though your voice left so many cracks she could have pulled the trigger. Took my silence as validation. What do you offer someone who has lost everything? You'll sometimes feel like a suicide hotline. They'll only call you when they're desperate. 9. Loneliness will never frighten you. It captivates you. Holds you prisoner, but you have caught Stockholm syndrome. Made a palace wall from your prison bars and a crown from your shackles. Created a sanctuary from silence. Loneliness to you is more complete than commitment. You will create a maze that no one could ever get into. Like the labyrinth, your heart shifts and changes. You know your strength, but have never seen its boundaries. You speak your mind, but never your heart. So your heart stays mute, stays quiet, stays content. 10. English is cool, girl, but you better learn to speak Tigrinya and Amharic. Just understanding is not the same. Don't be like Google Translate, know your language too. You come from a long line of immigrants, born in Saudiya, but your blood is Abyssinian. Don't forget your roots. 11, you're not for free. Hide your kind hearts. They're coming for you like vultures. Don't let them take you. 12, love yourself first. 13, you will realize that pleasing others is a sport that you will never have enough training for. So quit and let God handle the rest. 14, you'll find a hobby that puts your introverted self in front of more people than you could ever speak to. And you hate every minute of it. The moment before, during, but it's the moment after that holds you here. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, that's it. Bye, guys.
Mashallah. Jazakallah khair, Hanan. Mashallah. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to leave your camera on for just a minute before you jet. So, Sister Gail, I'm going to have you do the announcements, and then we're going to pause our recording for a private announcement. So, inshallah, go ahead, Sister Gail.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters, from our family to yours. The board of the Mainline Muslim Society would like to wish you a blessed and joyous Ramadan. Posted on the screen is the Amanan Foundation's webpage. Please contribute to our ongoing projects under MLMS at www.amanafoundation.com. Also, if you know someone who needs help, please reach out to us for assistance. Anyone who has been sick or has family members who are sick, please send the names through our chat so we can say dua for them. You are encouraged to ask questions during our Q&A, questions and answer sessions during our upcoming community learning discussion, which will occur right after I'm finished speaking. Thank you. This ends our announcements. Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you so much, Sister Gail. Jazakallah khair. So please, if I'm going to unmute anyone, if anyone has any questions or comments they'd like to ask, everyone's been unmuted, I think. Unless you've personally muted yourselves. Yep, I think everyone's unmuted. So does anyone have any questions or comments? We do have a comment from our Facebook viewers saying, Sister Halima to Hanan, saying that was beautiful, mashallah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So any questions, comments? So Relwan, I had a question for you about the jinns. So I know they live on an ulterior plane. They live in houses like we do, in our same homes, I know they live in our houses, but does their plane look exactly like ours does?
It's really something that we don't know. There's a lot of speculation about that. And, you know, whole lot has been written on it, but I think the best answer truly is that we just don't know what that would mean, right? And so the way that some scholars read Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about their being made from fire and so on is more so to highlight how essentially different they are. It's like they're subtle. You know, like how I can't hold fire, but I can hold clay. It's also, some scholars talk about how it has to do with, there's a lot of suggestion about their immateriality, you know? And I think that might suggest some things about what living means for them. What would it even mean if we really go deep into this, what would it mean to live in a house? What's a house? Because for us, a house is a structure. You know what I mean? It's a structure. It is bound by in a space. And if we're talking about beings that are not material, that means they're not bound by space. And so you almost have to read any discussion of them. So we know we are told that they're here with us. And yet they're not bound by space. So they're not occupied by this particular locale. And yet they're here. Think of it like almost like angels too. So what is the reality of that? I think truly we don't know. It's
Yeah.
and it's more like there's Allah is informing us that there's an awareness they have where Allah expresses that awareness, that proximity, which is not physical. Allah expresses that proximity, or that proximity is sometimes expressed in traditions by way of saying they live in the houses, they live in X. It's a type of expressing it in a way that we might understand, despite the fact that the reality is a little bit different. If that makes
Got
sense.
it. Yeah, it does. No, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay. So let me, we've stopped our live stream.